Welcome back to Unraveled Game Thoughts. It has been a minute since I've been able to get a video out. Here I am trying to get my top 20 games, finally completing my top 100 from 2024. Starting with my number 20. That being said, number 20 is Wayfarers of the South Tigris by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips. This is published by Garfield Games, and there's a lot to like about this game. Number one, the art by Mihailo Dimitrievsky, whose name hopefully I'm getting better at, but still I'm probably not quite getting right. But he has got beautiful art. I love the art that these the Garfield Games has that feature Mihailo's art. It's I don't know. I think of it as very evocative. It reminds me of an artist that used to do comic book series I loved when I was a kid. Wayfarers is in the South Tigris series. This is the first game of the South Tigris series. Largely a tableau builder. You're building land, sea, or space cards, and based on the number of symbols that you collect and or have in your tableau, depending on how you view that, and how that connects with the space cards, which are largely point scoring cards. It's involves that aspect, plus also some dice manipulation. Now, the dice that you're placing, while you'll be placing a dice to take an action a lot of times, you have an area on your board known as your caravan, and it will indicate which numbers on your dice have certain symbols. You're going to need certain symbols to play on some particular cards, land or sea, that will allow you some action. The more symbols the card has, the more likely that's going to give you a slightly more powerful action. You also have workers in the game, and the game board, there's a game board, but then you're placing cards around the game board that are really just an extension of the game board, although you can get those cards to bring to your tableau, and you place workers on those cards whenever you take the action that's right above or below the card, depending on its orientation around the board. When you gain a card that has workers on it, that is one way you get workers. The journal track in the center is also a significant aspect of the game that you really have to watch what other players are doing. If someone is really shooting across that track, they get to the end, that's an end game trigger. So there's a lot to like about this game. It is very colorful. It's got mechanics that are it's not hard to teach, pretty easy to get your head around. It's a very creative mix of pretty common mechanics. I wouldn't say there's anything immensely unique, although the dice manipulation in the game is somewhat unique in that the way that journal track influences endgame is a little different than most games, although you'll probably find something similar if you look hard enough. But that is Wayfarers. That's my number 20. Moving right along to my number 19 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a 2020 game by Min and Elwin, published by Czech Editions Game, or Czech Games Edition, CGE. And this, when it first came out about the same time as Dune Imperium. I really thought, just due to theme, I was going to really favor Dune Imperium more. But I've played both games pretty enough that I feel fairly confident that I like Lost Ruins of Arnak more than I enjoy Dune Imperium. I do like them both. I ended up feeling like Lost Ruins of Arnak had the best combination of theme, streamlined mechanics, and easy to get to the table. It's one that's not too hard to get to the table with family as well, because despite all the pieces, it comes out of the box and goes out on the table pretty fast. I think I can't remember if I have mine in bags or if I was able to get a 3D print of mine, but either way, it doesn't really take too long to set up because it's pretty nice components. if I had one complaint about components, is that the really nice blue arrowheads and the really nice tablets, but the compasses and coins are just cardboard punch-outs. So I'd like to get some nice coins to put in my copy of the game and some kind of nice compass. I've looked around. I know there's some stuff out there. I haven't quite landed on one that I'm like, yes, I really like those, but it would be nice to have those to kind of make all the components like really a little extra, little more beefy and tactile in its play. Moving on to 18 is almost bordering on a classic. Viticulture, also by Stonemaier Games, and designed by Jamie Stegmaier and Alan Stone, is a bordering on a classic worker placement game. I have the Tuscany Essential Components. I feel like that is highly relevant to this being on my list where it is at number 18. It would not be this high if Viticulture was just the base game, and it's not that I don't like the base game. I think the base game is fun and I would enjoy playing it, but I definitely wouldn't enjoy getting it to the table as much as I do when it has all these extra components. I really like that little area control space where you can get a few bonuses in the bottom left-hand corner of the board. I really like having 4 distinct seasons to work with and going through each season, and I really like having the buildings that you can build on your tableau. You can only have 2 of them at once, but I enjoy that aspect of the game, and the workers, the specialized workers that you can utilize during the course of the game. You're not always going to use them, but I think they're really helpful, and I think it's a nice addition in their expansions that came out for Viticulture. So when I have all of those pieces and components involved, I think it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and would like to get it to the table this next year a little bit more and see if I feel like, does this move up the list? Does this move down the list? As worker placement games go, I think this is one of the better ones that I enjoy more, and it has that race aspect. And over the last couple of years, I like games that have kind of a race. And it's not, I don't know if a race is the right word to put to it, but there's the track along the bottom. Whenever you get to, I think it's 25 points in the Tuscany edition, the first player to get there triggers the end game, and then you finish that season, and at the end of the season you see who's gotten the farthest, and you go from there. And there's a lot of different opportunities in the game to move up that point track, whether it's through leveraging your visitors that come in any of the seasons, or through the actual making of wine. It's like a push and pull throughout the game to try to get there at the end first. So number 17 is new on my list this year. I am not sure. I feel pretty good that it will stay in my top 100 over time, but as far as is it going to remain this high on my list, I'm not sure. It is River of Gold by Keith Pigot. It's probably got some kind of an accent or a pronunciation that I'm mispronouncing, so I'm sorry, Keith. Came out this year, 2024, published by Office Dog, and it is just a very nicely streamlined game. You're traveling, you only have 3 actions in this game. You're either sending one of your 2 boats down a river. They start the game in 2 different places, and you're gaining resources, collecting things from wherever your boat stops, or you're delivering goods that you can collect in game to a customer, which is going to give you some influence and some bonuses. What it is, build buildings. That's what it is. Build buildings. So you're either sailing down the river, you're building buildings, or you're delivering to the customers. Those actions are going to give you influence in one of, I think it's 5 or 6 different potential factions along the side of the board. At the start of all your turns, you're going to roll a 6-sided, it's like a custom die, and it is 6 factions because each number is affiliated with one of the factions. And that die, you're going to either sail that number of spaces down the river, you can build a building in that particular faction's section, or you can deliver to that particular kind of that customer if they're associated with that faction. You can influence your die with these points, like sun. I call them sun points, but that's not what they're called in the game. But you can, if you have some of those, you can spend them, and for each one you spend, you can shift the die up or down, and you can go from 1 to 6 or 6 to 1. And it's super fast. I would say this game with 4 players can take under an hour. And that's why I say this is a very streamlined game. I haven't played it enough yet to really have a good feel of the best way to streamline all those things together. But it's really fun. It reminds me of Teotihuacan, honestly, a little bit. It's with the only being 3 actions you take, the options are a little bit more limited, but it still feels very crunchy. So, if I have a recommendation for this year of what's a good 2024 game, I think, and I haven't really done, I don't know if I did my top 24. I don't think I did a top 10 list for 2024 yet, but River of Gold is probably, I think, going to be at the top of that list. I will have to again review the games for 2024 that I got to play so far and see what I think. All right, number 16 is, again, probably borders in the classic realm, I think, at this point. And this is a co-op game, Robinson Crusoe, The Adventures of Cursed Island by Ignacia Trzwisky and Johanna Kijanka. Sorry, Ignacia, I'm not getting your name right, I'm sure. Published by Portal Games, very good game, excellent co-op. If you like the Robinson Crusoe theme, then I highly recommend this game. It does have some amount of setup and prep that you have to do to get ready, because you're picking a scenario. You have to set the game up for that scenario to some degree. But I wouldn't say it's much. It's definitely no harder than, say, prepping for like a game of Gloomhaven. In fact, if you play this game enough, it's probably going to get easier, because you're going to have, you'll probably have things sorted in a way that it makes it easier to get those things out. You'll know where things go on the board. And so whereas something like a Gloomhaven, you got to do, different maps and find things, and you don't have all the same pieces every single game. In Robinson Crusoe, you're going to have a lot of the similar pieces every single game. There is some variability because you don't always have the same items, but in general, it's a really, I think, a challenging and difficult co-op, and I find it, even the solo version of the game, to be pretty fun. I've never beaten the solo. I've played it multiple times. I find it very challenging to defeat, and that's playing with the added fella that you get in the game when you're playing solo, because you don't get 2 characters. You get your character, and then you can add the dog, and you can add Friday to help you out. But I always play with the dog and Friday and still struggle to beat that in solo. But then again, I could just be very bad at it. So great game, though. My number 16, very thematic. It's all the games I've played with a group, we always have a fantastic time. It usually takes about 3 hours. It's a blast. It's absolutely a blast. Great stories that come from that. Number 15 is a 2-player only game. It is Targi. Probably a lot of people's pretty high up on a 2-player game. If people are rating 2-player games, I would think this one will land pretty high up. 2012 game's been around for a while, by Andreas Steiger and published by Cosmos Games. It's doesn't have anything mind-blowingly unique about the mechanics in general. You're building a tableau of cards. They're going to score points based on how many of the same type you have in a lot of cases, or some of the cards will score points off of other cards. What is really fun about this game is when you build the game board, you're basically taking cards and you're building this outer edge of cards, and those are never going to change, and then you fill in. I think it's a 5x5, and then you're going to fill in the middle a 4x4. And those cards in the middle are the ones that are going to change throughout the game. They're either going to A, give you resources, or B, they're going to be a card that's a point scoring card that you could potentially put in your tableau. Now, there are some things that keep you limited in the game. You can only have one card in your hand. So at the beginning of the game, I don't think you don't start with a card in your hand. But if you get a card in your hand, you either have to figure out a way to play that card, or you have to discard a card, or you have to discard any card that you might draw into your hand if you have something in your hand that's kind of blocking anything else from getting in there. So your hand size of 1 is a significant limitation in the game. You're going to get 3 worker pawns, 3, because I can do that, and you're going to place them around the board. And generally speaking, you're generally going to place a worker pawn on spaces such that when you draw lines down the board, there are going to be 2 crossing points in the middle, and those are the 2 cards in the middle of the board you're going to interact with. You're going to be picking it up, potentially putting it in your hand, or discarding it if it's a point card, a target card, or you're going to be gaining resources if it's a resource card. One of those 2 things. You also get to take the actions on the 3 spaces that you're putting your worker pawns around the board. So you essentially are generally going to get 5 actions on a turn, and by actions mean you place all your workers and then you do all the things. When it's your turn, you do all the things that your workers do, and you can do them in any order you want. And that's a pretty unique system, and I think it works really well. There's a lot of blocking involved because you can place there's a pawn that moves around that's just neutral pawn. You can place your worker across from the neutral pawn, but if your opponent places a pawn on this side of the board, you are not allowed to place your worker across from your opponent. So your opponent blocks you. You can't go on the space he's on, and you can't go on the space across from him. So there's a lot of unique push and pull there with those. That's very important in the game and in which actions you're able to take. But that is Targi. All right, number 14. I'm going to try to speed it up just a tad here. Number 14 is Maracaibo by Alexander Pfister. And I think my copy is published by Games Up. I don't know if it's the only publisher that publishes this. Most likely there's others. But this is a 2019 game. The game is absolutely fantastic. This has been on one of my top games almost since I got it. It's kind of moved up and down anywhere between 30 and I don't know if it was ever in the top 10, but it was very close to top 10. I think it might have been in the top 10 like the first year I had it. But it's not really moved a ton. It's just a great game. Little bit of a tableau builder. You are moving around. You're moving a boat around a kind of what looks like a map of the Caribbean. I think it is supposed to be the Caribbean. And you have an explorer that can potentially move as well. You don't have to move the explorer, but you can. And you're trying to build cards, which is basically like paying the cost to play the card, and it becomes part of your tableau. And it might give you an ongoing ability. It might allow you to place a worker in a city that can give you a different action at that city, or I should say town, because the cities are actually have their own actions, and usually that could be a battle or paying, upgrading a part of your boat. You have these tokens on your boat at the beginning of the game, and when you remove tokens from your boat and put them out on the board, essentially delivering goods, then you upgrade your boat as you unlock. You deliver 2 tokens off a particular spot, and that unlocks that spot, which is generally a different action spot for you on your board, or sometimes it just gives you money. Sometimes it might give you some points. And there are certain parts on your boat that you can't unlock until you have a certain number of things unlocked on other parts of your boat. So you're largely trying to just trigger these things together through the building of your cards. That's where a lot of this is going to start, is how well do you build your cards out to either decrease the cost of future cards or build up influence for a nation, because you can do battle on the board with nations. Now, you're not battling in the sense that I'm going against another player. These are battle tokens that you're going to draw, and you're going to pick a country to fight for, and depending on what country you fight for, you will get some benefit. It might be money, It might be influence with that nation. Could be possibly some other things, but ultimately, the battles are going to definitely give you influence with the nation at the end of the game. You're going to be scoring based on your influence with all three nations, the value of your cards in your tableau, and 4 of the cards that are at the top of the board are kind of end-game point scorers that if you've played the game reasonably well, you'll get at least probably one of those, because those usually are a pretty big source of points. There might be ways that you can really finagle the game and score a massive amount of points without going for one of those. I don't think successfully done that as of yet, but it's a fairly tight game, and there's sort of a campaign aspect built in. It's a very, I'd say, weak storyline, but what is fun is that there are all these tiles that come in a game that as you play through the campaign, some cities will become towns, some towns will become cities, and the board state changes, and you don't have to like finish a whole game to move the campaign forward. It's based on certain quests you complete, and they can be completed. You can complete several things within one game, so getting through the campaign can take maybe, I don't know how many games. I've not done a calculation or a search to see how many games it takes to finish the campaign, but it's based on how fast people are able to accomplish those things throughout the course of the campaign. So I find it easy to teach. I find it easy to play. Easy not in the sense that I'm good at it, but in the sense that it's enjoyable to play. It's easy to get to the table, and I feel like it's very smooth mechanics. Moving on to number 13. This one is 2016 by Jacob Frixelius. You guessed it, it's Terraforming Mars, published by Frix Games. I don't know what I could say about Terraforming Mars that people don't already know. I actually probably don't get my physical copy to the table as much because I don't, while I could probably get my family to play it, they're not inclined toward it thematically. I don't think it's their type of game. But it's not that hard, and I can probably get any number of folks in our game group to play at some point or another. All right, Terraforming Mars. Moving right along, number 14. Oh, nope, that's number 12. Number 12, I just recently added to my collection via a trade. So I haven't gotten a chance to play my copy yet, but I am looking forward to it. And I have played this game 3 times, I think. And this is Hegemony. This came out in 2023. When I saw the theme and sort of the idea of asymmetric factions that are, the different working classes. What do you have? The white collar, the working class, the state, and the I said the working class, the middle class, I think. I thought that is a really neat theme. I'm not sure how that's going to work together, but I got to play it. This is designed by Vangelis B and Varnavagas Timotheo. So sorry, I'm not going to try the one name. I'll probably just butcher it. This is published by Hegemonic Project Games, and it's just a fantastic game. Having played it twice, I've played as the state and I've played as the working class. And I guess maybe I've just played it twice. I thought I played it 3 times, but I think I've only played with those 2 classes. So it means I'd like to play a game as the white collar class, and I'd like to play a game as the middle class. Just so I will have tried all of them. It is very thematic. It's very well integrated. I don't know how balanced it is. I couldn't tell you, but I don't feel like it's imbalanced, and I feel like in both my games, different players won, and there's a lot to be said about how well you play your game and leverage the different pieces in the game that can work best for your class. If you leverage them well, I think you stand a good chance of winning the game. So I'd be interesting to see a very highly competitive game with 4 players that really knew all the classes really well. But I think this is one of the games you just have to play multiple times, and maybe it's even better to play with a lot of players that are very familiar with the game to get to that point where you can really dig into your class really well. But man, it is It is a lovely game. Haven't played it enough. So, but I do like the mechanics. There's enough mechanics that I see in the game with what worker placement, with some I don't know if deck building is the right word, but maybe you could call it maybe some deck building. The voting mechanism, all of that, I think is really nicely wound together around the theme, and I greatly appreciate that. So, moving along, that is my number 11, or my number 12. My number 11 is maybe my last Garfield game on the list. This is 2023 S.J. McDonald Shem Phillips again, and this is Scholars of the South Tigris. Ever since Scholars came out, I really liked it. I think Scholars, and I've played Inventors, and I've played Scholars, and I've played Wayfarers. I own all three. I think Scholars is my favorite. It's going to be more plays before I really know, because I haven't played any of those three, I think, enough to fully know which one I really think I like the best. But I think Scholars is it. The theme is what really hit me at first. I really like the idea of the translating of scrolls and having to go find the scrolls and having to hire the translators, and then those translators then come and become like part, when they retire, they become part of your actions that make your actions more powerful. So there's a lot of triggering of things together that I think works really well thematically and is very fun mechanically. I've also found like the what scrolls you target is, you have to focus on that, and you really want to stack scrolls in a way that they kind of synergize off each other to give you in-game points. But there's a lot of, trying to make sure there's the translators you need to translate the scrolls you want to translate, to make sure those scroll languages that you want are over there in the temples to be translated, and then you're trying to get your dice to be the right dice that you want on a turn, the right color dice. And I think the first several times I played, I really focused on, like, let me make sure I get enough of these colored dice and try to get rid of these white dice as fast as I can. But the more I've played, the more I'm like, no, actually you want to gather that's kind of the pivot in the game, is you really just want to gather white dice for a little bit and do everything you can to make the most of your actions. And then at some point you pivot and you start trying to get rid of some of those dice. There are going to be some negative points at the end of the game if you have too many white dice, but it's not the biggest point gainer in the game. It's really about the scrolls and the translating and the scholars, and you're getting the most out of your actions that you're taking. So really fun game. I like it. It's not really hit home for everybody that I've played it with, but I don't see that one moving too far down my list over time. It's the dice color wheel aspect of how that all fits together, I find highly intriguing, and I know it's kind of a cute, almost gimmicky mechanic, but I like it, and it's not in other games. It's fairly unique to this one, although I'm sure somebody will probably utilize that later. But Scholars of the South Tigris was solid hit right out of the gate. Number 10 definitely falls into the classic realm. The Castles of Burgundy. Now, the first time I played this game, I played the old version, and I liked it. I liked the mechanics of the game right away. I was like, I like the way these points work together, and you kind of build these tiles and fill in areas of your board and score points. It was dry, and the art was so Euro and ugly in that first game I played. And there were several times I thought about buying this game, and I was just like, yeah, my family is much more easily gotten to the table with pretty games. Beautiful art, colorful pieces, lots of tactile. And I know we all as gamers, we tend to like the metal coins, but even my family who aren't really gamers, they really like metal coins and fun pieces to move around and very colorful boards. And if I don't have those things in a game, I know that no matter how much I like a game, it's hard to get to the table. So it's got to be one that I'm really willing to push with other gamers if it's not one that I can get my family to the table. Now, when I played this game, I knew, like, all right, this has got Becky written all over it. She's going to love this game, but she will, again, always choose Wingspan with more colorful cards and birds and, the mechanics she likes over Castles of Burgundy in this dry kind of ugly Euro game. So the special edition came out. I was like, I'm buying that. So that was one of those more expensive games that I knew right away I can get to the table with my family. They will love it, and they do. They love it. We have all those acrylic tiles, and they I don't know how many times we've played, but we've played this game a lot since I got that one. It's by Stefan Feld, published by Awaken Realms. It's a great game. So my number 10. It's in my top 10. It probably will stay in the top 10, minimally top 20, because it is an absolutely fantastic game. I love playing it on BGA, love playing it in person. It's pretty easy to suggest, even if you're just trying to do something quick and like, hey, play a game that takes about an hour. It doesn't take that long to get out, set up, and that's with all the fancy pieces and stuff. It's pretty easy. All right, number 9 is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. Racing game by Adger Harding Grenerud and Daniel Skold Peterson, published by Days of Wonder. Art by Vincent Dutrait. Lovely game. The deck management aspect of the game works really well with the theme of a race, and you get heat. You have heat in your engine. You want to get it back in your engine, and trying to figure out, when do I leverage the heat in my engine to push further down the track? And that is so hard to do. And if you don't do it right, you either run out of heat and you get to the end of the game and you don't have any heat in your engine, and now you just can't push ahead to get that last sprint to the finish line on the second lap around the track, or you try to be very conservative with your heat throughout the game, thinking I will spend my heat at the very end of the game, but then everybody gets so far ahead of you that you don't even have a chance of finishing the game because, I saved all this heat, but now I can't push it hard enough or fast enough to get to the end of the game and actually compete to win the race. Very well designed, in my opinion. I really like adding some of those extra cards in that give you little tune-ups on your cars. I have not had a chance to play through the different racetracks or through a season, but I look forward to that. Fantastic game is my number 9. Number 8, 2019 game. I was a little sketchy when someone recommended this game to me back around 2019, 2020. This is by Tommaso Battista and Simone Luciani and published by Cranio Creations. This is Barrage. Barrage is it's an economic game for all intents and purposes. It's very what do you call it? Area controlling. You're gonna purchase sections on the board, and there's a little bit of blocking with players, and this is one of those games that you can potentially have yourself kind of locked out of the game if you don't know what you're doing, and people buy certain things, and then you end up in a situation where there's just not really a lot of areas for you to go and get points. So this could be considered a pretty aggressive game, I would guess. It is on BGA, so before ever purchasing this game, I'd probably usually recommend, unless you just see it and know this is definitely my type of game, play it on BGA and learn the rules, because there are a lot of bonuses and triggers on your player board, and some asymmetric-ish powers. They're not really asymmetric, but some different player powers that factor in. And it's a fantastic game. I mean, you're largely trying to channel water and use that water to work your dam and your power plants and create energy, and energy will give you points and allow you to fulfill contracts. And so there is a lot of economic management of the resources available in this game. I really want more plays of it so that I can get a better idea of, is this the game that I just want to play over and over and over again, or is this more of a once or twice a year kind of game? I mean, I feel like I only get to play it once or twice a year, but I turn to it on BGA. Like, if I go too long without playing it on BGA, I'll throw another game up there and get people to play. But because it's a little harder, it's not one that everybody, I think a lot of the folks in my play group tend to be more light gamers, like trick-taking games and stuff like that. And so I don't play with quite as many people that play some of these heavier games like Barrage. Number 7 has been on my list for a while, remained in my top 10 for a while. Probably have a hard time seeing it leaving. It's an awfully good game. It's Teotihuacan. 2018, Daniel Tassini, published by NSKN Games. And I just love Teotihuacan. I did not expect much from this game when I first got it. I found some deal. I can't remember where it was. It wasn't like Amazon. It was like one of the board game websites. They were selling it for like $20. I was like, oh, I'd seen it. It was probably around 2019, and I saw it. I was like, this, it's probably not that good, but I've watched a playthrough, and I was like, it seems like it'd be fun to try. $20, I'll try it. I kind of expected it to be one of those, I'm going to try it, I'll play it a few times, and then most likely it'll move on, and I'll sell it or trade it. And I loved it. I love the mechanics. I love the action selection, the variability of the boards if you're not using the base game. I almost usually just the base board whenever I'm teaching somebody the game. But is it a lovely game? It's a very tight game that fits a nice niche in the gaming collection and is better than a lot of the other T games out there that I've played. And I've played most of them. And this is easily the one that I when I play the others, I don't feel tempted that they're better than this one. Like, this is just a really, really good, well-designed game, in my opinion. Moving right along is number 6. This is, I actually I've started calling this apostrophe Haven games. Instead of saying Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, Jaws of the Lion, I grouped them all together. They are it's different versions of the same game. Now, if you force me into a corner and say, I want you to rank the best one, I'd have to think about it. There are things I like about each one, and there are probably things I could point out and say, I don't know about that for each one. Ultimately, I really want to get the Gloomhaven 2nd edition that has the tweaked characters and some added bits and pieces. I didn't back it. I just wasn't in a place where I was ready to back a game that big. I still have the first Gloomhaven. I've beaten the first Gloomhaven. I still own it, but I probably would replace it or pass it on to somebody if I ended up getting the 2nd edition. And I'm playing Frosthaven with a friend, albeit very slowly. I think it's going to take us a decade to finish it at the rate we're going. But Frosthaven is absolutely fantastic. I like that one. I would argue I feel like the storyline's even better than Gloomhaven, and I like the in-between stuff that you get to do that Gloomhaven didn't have quite as much of that. Although the decisions of which card I'm going to choose whenever my character upgrades, it's still great for Gloomhaven. I still think that's fantastic. And these are just very, very, very well-designed, lovely dungeon crawl games. So they are by Isaac Childress and published by Cellofair Games. But yeah, very, very, very good apostrophe Haven games. Number 5. This one, okay. This is what I'll say. I won't call this classic. My overused word, this video. This is probably in my opinion, one of the most underrated games that is out there. And I think as time goes on, it seems like it is becoming more and more underrated the more time goes by. It came out in 2017. It's designed by Michael Kiesling and Andreas Schmidt. It's published by Eggersfield Game, and this is Heaven and Ale. Now, I've not played the expansion, Kegs and Barrels. I don't know what that adds to the game or takes away. I have not really felt much any compelling to have to add that expansion. The base game is so good. Heaven and Ale is just an absolutely lovely, I guess you call it a tableau builder, but you're trying to move your ingredient quality around the board, and you're trying to move your monk. Your monk ends up at the end of the game, wherever he ends up being like both a multiplier for points and it's like a ratio of, once you get to the end of the game and all your ingredients, if they're all spread out, you can move them back at at best a 1-to-1 ratio, but that would be really hard to do, and as high as a 6-to-1 ratio, where you move your best ingredient 6 spaces backward and your worst ingredient 1 space forward, and you keep doing that until all your ingredients are fairly well clumped together. Absolutely lovely interaction and mechanics, and it just hasn't grown old on me. I've played it multiple times. I enjoy playing it every time. I wish they'd have it on BGA. I would play it quite often on BGA if it was available to play there. But I am happy to play my physical copy because it is just brilliant. And somebody has published a solo option that you can play. It's got like cards and kind of a solo opponent you can play against, and that's nice too. It's not necessary, but it's available on somewhere in the BGG forums. You can find that and print that out, and I've printed that out and cut them out and laminated them, and so it's there as a component of my game if I ever feel like I just really want to play and I cannot find another player. Number 4 is one of the more thematic games that there is out there, at least among the games that I have played, and is a 2018 by Dan Halligan, who, at least as a human being, might be my favorite designer. He publishes through Kayenta Games, and which I think is his publishing company. This Dan is a fantastic human being. I'm honestly shocked that he would make any money off Obsession. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if I found out he didn't, because he is extremely generous in his handling of customers, and I know I actually won my copy of Obsession from Board Game Revolution. No, was it Board Game Revolution? No, it wasn't. It was Board Game Atlas. Board Game Atlas. They're not in existence anymore, but it used to be a board game community, and there's sort of a Discord community now. But they I won a copy of Obsession. I know I was interested at the time. I did not know what to expect at the time, but after playing it several times with Becky and some other folks, I was like, this is a really cool game. I like it. It's like Downton Abbey, the board game, but I like, probably this better than Downton Abbey, honestly. But I got all the expansions, base game, and then circling back around to like, why do I think Dan's a nice guy? The useful box came out, and there were some pieces that, some elements there that I didn't have in my copy of the game, and I was like, I tried to pay Dan to have it sent to me or see if I could buy the box, and you had to email him directly to even get it, and he just sent it to me. He would not take a payment, and it's like, no, you've spent enough on this game, just sent it to me. I was like, that's, man, that like and this is one guy kind of managing his whole thing. And so when I have experiences like with Days of Wonder where I can't get a single pawn sent to me, even if I'm willing to pay for it full price, and here's one guy managing his whole business, and he can do that. Like, customer service is customer service. It's just like you can't beat it. So kudos to Dan, but Obsession is a fantastic game. I don't say that just because the designer is a great person, but it is a fantastic game, period, and highly thematic. If you really like that Victorian Downton Abbey type theme, then if you've not played this game should probably be the highest one on your list to attempt and try and find someone who has a copy and give it a shot, because it's very, very fun to play. All the workers do a little something different, and suit a slightly different purpose, and all the tiles are different rooms that sort of fit in thematically with what's going on in the game and hosting activities. And then you're trying to up your reputation throughout the game. It's just it is absolutely lovely. So currently my number 4. I feel like it's shifted a little bit up and down here and there, but I have a hard time seeing this one leave my top 10. This is one of those games that if you're like, you have to get your collection down to 5 games. This one makes the cut. I would have to keep this one. Number 3, and that's Wingspan. Designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, published 2019 by Stonemaier Games. This is a great game. Now, I will argue, like, if you're just talking just the base game, no expansions, this might move down the list slightly. When it first came out, and I played it several times, and we played it a lot. This is the most highly played game in my house by a long shot. My wife loves this game. My kids probably care less, but my wife loves this game. So we have played this game, and this is probably the easiest one to say, what do we want to play? We'll play this. We'll get it to the table. It's super fun. Now, Wormspan could end up giving a run for the money because my wife likes that one, but a Wingspan is still, for me, it's the better of the two, very easily. And I much prefer it with the expansions. I feel like each expansion added something. So all of them together, though, very, very, very good. And this is a lovely game, and I'm looking forward to the following expansions. I got that big nesting box that houses them all. You can kind of see it on the top of my very edge of the corner of my screen there. That nesting box with Ark Nova sitting on top of it. And it is just love it. Love the interactions, love the different things, different ways you can win. With all the birds they have in there now, I mean, you can win with food, you can win with eggs, you can win with just points of birds on the board. There's just a lot of different dynamics. Moving on to my number 2 is a 2018 game by Gavin Brown, Matt Tolman, and Martin Wallace, published by Roxley Games, and it is Brass Birmingham. Number 1 on BGG for a reason. Every game I have a blast playing. So that is Brass Birmingham, and I've even got upgraded. I 3D printed a bunch of trains that I like to play with. I've replaced the link tiles with actual trains and boats that we use when we play now, and have the the iron clays, which are fantastic and make messing with the money a lot more fun and interesting. One day I kind of hope to upgrade the coal and iron pieces to something that fits in those little squares, but also is a little bit more meaty and adds a little weight to the game, just for kicks and giggles and tactile pleasantries. Number 1, finally, at last, getting there, is the 2021 Matthias Wiki game published by Furland Spiel, and that is Ark Nova. Number 1 game. I think it's been my number 1 for at least a couple of years now. Actually, I think the first year I wasn't quite sure, but it's been my number 1 for a while. I've had a hard time unseating that. I don't think there's a game that I play more on BGG than Ark Nova. I want to say I've got somewhere in, I don't think I'm quite at 200 yet, but it won't shock me if before the end of next year I'll have 200 or 300 plays of Ark Nova. I love playing it. My own physical copy, I would get to the table way more if I could. A lot of it's just finding the players that want to play it. I think when I first started playing, I felt like it was a heavy game, but as I played it more and more, I don't, which is probably natural. Like the more you play a game, the less heavy it feels. But I feel like it is a lot lighter game and can be played in a much shorter time once you understand how all the different pieces fit together, because you end up getting those pieces to move around the board and meet by the end of the game a lot faster when you know what you're doing. And when I first started playing, I mean, it took forever to do that, and it felt like forever to do that because it was it just, I didn't know what I was doing. And even with that, even if I'm playing a very long game, I still love the mechanics of the game and that tableau building element, and trying to maximize my how I'm managing my zoo. I love all the interactions and theming and all that so much that it doesn't matter to me how long the game takes. I am having a blast the whole time. Got the expansion to it. Expansion adds a ton. I know one of the biggest there's probably a couple criticisms to Ark Nova for those that are more detractors, but I know one of the board game criticisms would be like the money was really goofy. Well, I found metal coins for Ark Nova that are designed for Ark Nova, and that also helps. And it helps convince people to play because it's like, look, I got the metal coins. And so that's always fun because money is a big aspect of this game. You need it to pay for your animals and get things into your enclosures, and the boring black squares were definitely not as interesting to play with as hefty metal coins that feel fun to throw around on the table. So probably not as conservative, since this is a game where you're trying to use conservation points to move around the board, but it does make the game play more tactily delicious. So that is my final top 20 for 2024. I thank you for joining me, and hope some of you will come back next year when some of these shift here and there. But for now, enjoy whatever gaming you're doing, wherever you're doing it, especially hopefully more over the holidays. And thank you for watching Unraveled Game Thoughts. Until next time.